We finally made it, game 10. And I have to say, even though this is the 10th straight draw and the current record holder for most drawn games in a World Championship match sequentially, I'm very pleased. This one surprised me. Like I was making my notes and I was being vicious beforehand. I'm like, there's so many ways to try to win this. Let's go ahead and give it from the white side, Caruana side. And Caruana decided to abandon the Rosalimo again and go directly into this stuff. Now, I feel like this was the moment. If Black wanted to throw a surprise, but let me throw out a few theoretical things real quick. One, you could try the Kalashnikov, but I'm not a big fan of this because the Sveshnikov compared to the Kalashnikov, you have this option with C4, and this is a very straightforward position where it feels as if White just has the bind and continue to apply pressure using the D5 hole and the D6 weakness. Now, it may not be enough to prove to win the game, but it sure is comfortable to play for White. Another example would have been the Accelerated Dragon, where I also recommend a Maroczy bind approach with the C4 and E4 pawns. And, we just get this solid position, and this is following the main line of the database. And already this is getting uncomfortable because, Black's idea is to try to get rid of this bishop by going Queen F8, H5, King H7, Bishop H6. An idea that I've seen Carlsen use from the white side against Karyakin in English, as well as from the games of Eugene Perelstein, who is well known to be an accelerated dragon specialist. And once we get to about this position, I'm not so confident in Black's chances, and the database feels the same way. So here would be my recommendation. If I was in Carlsen's corner right now, I'd be recommending the time on off. But we only have one more opportunity. The final game of the match, for him to whip out the time on off and surprise the crap out of Caruana. This is what I would prefer to see. I mean, Kasparov chose the Najdorf Shebinigan style when facing Karpov in the situation where he could not lose. I think you got to go with the Sicilian in these situations. And in the Taimanov, Caruana used to play the straightforward English attack with Queen D2 up until a few years ago, and then he started playing Queen F3. And here's an example game where I had Bishop D6 in my notes personally, because I used to play the Taimanov quite frequently. And after I saw this game by Caruana when it happened, I was so impressed by the play that I quit playing the opening. And I had evaluated this position as okay for Black, but then this this just happens where White has full coordination and Black has to slowly uncoil. And against a player as accurate and fearsome as Caruana, you can't really screw around in these positions too much. Otherwise, you just get the bone. And it's very impressive where, it's just gets the extra pawn and he converts. So rolling it back, I would not recommend Bishop D6, but I would recommend Knight E5. Knight E5 is a dirty move, and Black scores better than White in the database here. And Caruana has actually played it himself with Black, which shows if you're facing your pet line, whatever move that you play against it is probably the move you fear the most, and that's where I would be going if I was preparing for him. So this is a game following Giri and... No, it was Rajabov and Giri in Weekend Z 2015. And this game had some nasty tactics starting from right here. It was takes, then rook takes f7. You gotta put that emphasis when you smack down a line like that. And now we've got to find something for White, otherwise we die on b2. So with a perpetual. And for all the people who are hating on Giri, At least he plays openings with, a little bit of stones. What can we say? Now, coming back to this moment where rook c8 was played, e5, I feel, is an improvement, which stops the idea from the game. It has not been played before, and you get a position that's going to be something like this. And it's an interesting position to play for both sides. I wouldn't be upset if I got this position with black in a tournament. So those were my recommendations for what I would like to see the Taimanov in the last game of the match as like a, oh goodness, never saw that coming type situation. But Carlsen's pretty confident in the Sveshnikov. And as a side note, I believe the World Senior Championship's going on right now, and Sveshnikov is still at it to this day. I don't think his game went too well today, though, from the last time that I looked at it. But I just think it's impressive that we still have players that have openings on their namesake still around playing. So we get to the same position we had in Game 8, and right here in Game 8, Bishop D2 was played. Today it was B4. And some basic stuff's happening here. Same kind of spatial advantage that white got in the first game on the B6 square, and black's going all out on the king side. So nothing really interesting yet. Rook A3 I liked because he's already playing prophylactically against some ideas against his king. That stops some bishop H3 action of queen G6, things of that nature. So already, most humans will look at this position and go, this is not fun for white. It's not convenient or easy to come up with a plan for white. But black, on the other hand, it's, I'm going to push pawns at your king. I'm going to try to open it up and you die. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry here. So bishop C7, okay. And it begins. Getting rid of any pins and stuff. Now, this move B5 was really interesting, uncoordinating some, and Caruana at that time decides to bail out, get the knights off the board, and then right here, queen G5. This was an inaccuracy. B4 is supposedly the best move. I was watching the analysis of the St. Louis Chess Club. Excellent analysis. You should check it out if you haven't seen it. They had former world champion and two-time facer, we'll say, of Magnus in a world championship match, and Nod was on there. And some of his notes in this part of the game were very interesting, that afterwards, like, it ruins your evaluation of the position doing the engine. That's why I typically don't use the engine or any assistance when I'm doing analysis, and I don't recall it most of the time. So looking at this position, it's very, very uncomfortable for the first player. But after queen G5, you can actually take the B5 pawn, and there was a line that the computer showed that white's just a pawn up, and it's a defensible position. But I mean, you have to curl in a ball. So I would take a look at that for the full analysis. I'm not going to just regurgitate somebody else's work. So F3, bishop F1. And once we get to this position, it looks uncomfortable, but gradually more and more. There's really just no immediate breakthrough. It takes too many moves to get the rook lift over here, and it's just not enough. So queen D5, rook B4, and we have some liquidation. And both players doing the posturing. No weaknesses, no problems. Trade under the best circumstances. You didn't want the pawn on E2. And now, at first, when I looked at this endgame, I'm like, this looks pretty good for black, because black's king has a free hand in the game and white's king does not. But it's kind of offset by the strong B6 pawn that you have to worry about. So, first of all, we get some luft. And I would definitely consider a move like H5 in here, But I found some interesting in-game ideas later for this rook and pawn in-game that should be noted. So g4, you got to protect your extra pawn. And right here, it was really hard for me to see when I was thinking about the game live how exactly to try to go forward in this position. Because I felt like anything that you do with pushing the kingside pawns, when it's 2 versus 2 like this, it just gets locked. But there was an idea that was very interesting here. So if you go h6, the most natural move is h5, which was played in the game. But it was recommended by the engine to play g5. But the main point is, no matter what happens, black is actually able to play a g-pawn push. And now the best move is rook b5, which is extremely counterintuitive. Because if h takes, rook takes, black's rook is still putting pressure on this pawn, while at the same time you have some added threats against the g-pawn. So I found this to be an interesting breakthrough, and the computer line recommended rook b5, and g5 is weird to me. Rook aa5, rook d6, and we have this liquidation, which is more than likely going to be a draw anyway, but g6 definitely had that interesting idea. I mean, it was something that was new to me, so hopefully you find it interesting as well. In the game, king d4 was played, rook b5, rook d6, and I was reading the comments on leechess.org, and a lot of people were like, is this a win? Is this a theoretical win? No, not at all. And they agreed to a draw here, but I'm just going to give like a straw man argument example here. Let's say I have a free hand with white to do what I want. When you're playing this type of endgame, you want to try to trade pawns in a way that you have the most winning chances. So if I trade off these two for these two, this is a dead draw as long as the king can get to the corner and the rook can passively defend. That's simple. If I'm left with this one, it's the same scenario. The king just needs to be on g8, and then the rook can sit on the back rank and passively defend. The f-pawn gives you the most chances, but if you've studied rook and pawn in games, Lucina and Philidor, you'll understand the Philidor rook and pawn in game. It's very, very easy to draw. Once that pawn gets to about the 6th rank, you need to know to bring your rook down and check him infinite times, and there's no way to make progress pushing the pawn. So as these pawns push, they're going to be traded. So say, for instance, okay, well, there's the first trade. Now, it's a higher probability that you're going to have a g or h pawn, so this is dead drawn. And I don't think I really need to go too much further with this. So even if I allowed a position like this, I mean, I'm just going to passively defend. And, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, I could check forever here, but I'm just playing devil's advocate and letting white get to the position that he wants. This is literally dead drawn because you cannot use this trick. And I actually saw this in a tournament game once a number of years ago. Somebody had pressed for 30 moves to try to win this dead drawn position and got here and pushed the pawn with confidence. Black simply played check and then took all the pawns and then won the game. So moral of the story is, when it's a draw, take the draw. When it's like really, really dead drawn, take the draw. That's all I have for you guys today. Join us again for games 11 and 12. We're going to knock out this entire World Championship, and if we go to tie breaks, I will be there.